Today on CityCast Chicago, unpredictable weather, local strikes, and major festivals have come and gone. Summer is almost over, so lead producer Simone Alisei and I are looking back on some of the stories that have shaped Summertime Shy thus far. It's Monday, August 14th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Good morning, Simone.
Hey, good morning, Jacoby. How are you?
I'm doing well. Before we get into this conversation, you and I kind of got a bone to pick with each other, right? This entire episode is going to be about summer stories, but you and I can't even really agree on when the hell summer starts and ends. Simone, what are your parameters? How do you consider the summer season on when it begins and when it ends?
I tend to go towards sort of the cultural understanding of summer, which is from Memorial Day to Labor Day. You know, by the time Labor Day rolls around, kids are already in school. People have, for the most part, taken their summer vacations. We're into September. We're out of the summer holiday season. So that, to me, is what I think. So to me, summer's almost over. Like, we've only got a few weeks of summer left, truly.
And for me, summer has at least 6 more weeks. Now, while I start my back to school teaching in 2 weeks for one set of schools and then about 3 or 4 weeks. I like to think of that first month of back to school as summer still going because it keeps me motivated. It keeps me sort of it keeps me from sinking into the dread of like, all right, school is back. The next time I raise my head is like Thanksgiving or Go ahead.
Mean, I'm just like, do you really feel like it's still summer in mid-September, though? Like, is that really how you feel?
Yeah, I feel like September still has good weather. You could still be outside in shorts and a t-shirt, right? There's still some festivals going on in the city. The taste got pushed back a little bit, right? So I just feel like there's still a little bit of buzz and a little bit of energy sort of following where the weather is. I know that spooky season is trying to take over towards mid-September. We already in like pumpkin spice latte season come mid-September, but I'm still holding on to summer until at least, like that September 19th, September 20th.
I am shocked that even as a teacher, you feel that way, because I feel that school schedule is so ingrained in my body that's just like, okay, like now we're back and now it's a new thing that's happening and we're in school now. And that means it's no longer summer.
Either way, for the last few months, I, newsletter editor Sydney Madden, we have covered a bunch of stories across the city, but we were really focusing on those stories that have not only driven the headlines, but many of the conversations that are taking place across our city. And I think it's really important we start with the story of the summer, and that's been Chicago's ongoing attempt to provide resources to arriving migrants and asylum seekers. Simone, we've been talking about this for over a year. We're probably looking at over 13,000 arriving migrants to Chicago in that time. I saw a story earlier this week that says we're still looking at like 50 a day arriving to the city, while government officials are still struggling to make sense of this. What's the latest?
Well, so it's tough because this has been, as you said, this has been ongoing since last August. And there have been sort of a couple of adjustments, twists and turns in terms of like, how the city has adjusted its response. I think early on, it was just particularly early on the politics of it were so, we had buses coming from primarily Republican-led states near the U.S.-Mexico border. And that kind of political stunting was just so abhorrent to most of us, I think. The idea of just like sending people somewhere else, that really was sort of the focus. And then as it continued to happen, through the end of 2022, throughout 2023, the sort of conversation kind of turned to, wait, there are a lot of people here and we don't really have an organized sort of overall plan for dealing with this influx of people. And what we have definitely seen over the summer is city council trying to have more of a voice and try to get a handle on what is happening here, because basically you have shelters opening in their wards that they don't necessarily know are coming. You have migrants, asylum seekers sleeping at police districts in their wards that they're trying to house or get resources, get something, anything to. And now the very latest is it sounds like the city council, or at least some aldermen, don't even have a full grasp of how much money the city is spending
Yep.
on this overall. Our colleagues at the local CBS affiliate have been trying to get financial records to sort of support some claims that were made in a city council meeting back in April that said, the city was, it was an estimate that the city was spending, $7,000 on each arriving migrant. And the city has not turned over any of those financial records, or has even said that those records are not available.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a surprise, not just to reporters, but to the aldermen themselves. Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor is sort of like, why do we not know? Why can we not get this information in front of us when that is such a crucial piece of information, particularly for a body that theoretically controls the budget
Yeah.
of the city of Chicago?
I appreciate you mentioning our colleagues who, across Chicago's sort of news apparatus, have been trying to make sure that we don't get into this place that once a shelter opens, we sort of stop thinking about that community or that war and sort of move on to something else. And one of the problems Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor continues to bring up is, well, what services are we providing once people are in a shelter? Not only are we asking for more resources, but the transparency around how effectively the resources we have gotten going in the city are, how effective those are going. I mean, I wonder if we'll have any sense of that through this year, just how much is left to do, especially with people arriving every single day.
Yeah, I mean, this is not something that's going away by any stretch of the imagination. I think obviously another huge thing we're going to be looking at is the first day of school. We have now so many of the people who are here are families with young kids. And CPS is preparing to welcome those kids into school on August 21st, just next Monday. And so what is that going to look like? And how, what will that mean sort of for this population overall? We also know that before migrants were coming here, we were already in a housing and homelessness crisis, right? We were already having issues housing people. And some other reporting out of the Illinois Answers Project shows that, sort of in another city spending big question mark is the city has only spent a fraction of COVID dollars that were allocated toward homelessness services. We were already having a big problem, and then you add this vulnerable population on top of that. What will that look like in the city's budgeting process, which starts here in the fall?
With all of these calls for transparency, with figuring out, well, how do we get more money for arriving migrants? Okay, what are we doing with COVID relief money for people experiencing homelessness? And now that Brandon Johnson is entering his first budget season, people are really going to want to know, how are you planning to make a more transparent process for people trying to figure out how they should approve the requests you make for your budget?
We often hear it's like, we need more funds, we need to raise more revenue. But some of these stories, especially that on the homelessness funds, also then raises the question of, okay, well, you've got this big influx of money. Why are you not spending it? What did you do with it? Why are we not seeing the results of this big, bunch of money that you asked for? And so, yeah, I would say that the financing and sort of the kids are sort of the two things going into the fall that we'll definitely be watching on this story.
In addition to following the resources necessary for Chicago's arriving migrants and asylum seekers, we've also been following the increased labor movements that have been taking place, not only the ones that impact both Chicago and the country at large, but also these individual labor movements that have taken place at local hospitals, local nightclubs. Simone, you have some updates in regards to Loretto Hospital as well as Berlin nightclub.
Yeah, so I think these are sort of two of the most recent labor labor actions where we've seen some movement, some resolution here. Loretto hospital workers late last week reached a tentative agreement with the Austin hospital, ending an 11-day strike. It was a sort of variety of workers, non-nursing workers who with SEIU Healthcare Illinois. And so the union sort of claimed victory in this, said they won pay raises across the board in addition to sort of like minimum rate increases and a Juneteenth paid holiday, which they say sort of all these gains will, hopefully reduce staffing shortages, make it easier to hire so that, the hospital isn't short staffed. In a very different industry, Berlin nightclub in North Alstead, a very long-standing LGBTQ nightclub, workers there went on just a 2-day strike. They're a relatively new union, and this is sort of a new thing in this industry, frankly. They went on a 2-day strike asking, essentially really asking Berlin and the nightclub owners to come to the bargaining table and actually, bargain with the union and negotiate. And they have returned and are still bargaining now at this point. But I think the reason we bring these up, right, is like I said, these are two very different industries, and that's just like two of the industries where we've seen labor actions this summer. I mean, we had a conversation last week about the writers and actors striking, here and across the country. It's been sort of across industries in a way that I haven't seen in my own reporting career, sort of a level of solidarity across these many industries at the same time. It's kind of striking. No pun intended.
With that being said, I wonder how that changes the conversation. And I don't want to forecast too much, but we know, like the Chicago Teachers Union, for example, contract negotiations are coming up. And throughout Mayor Lightfoot's tenure, there were strikes. But because it felt like the conversation was particularly coming out of the Lightfoot administration, it was so focused on like how bad these strikes are for our children that I feel like the energy around those strikes didn't have as much support. But now that we've seen these multi-industry strikes, I wonder if people's approach or their feelings about labor initiatives, if they've changed some since we saw like our teachers go on strike a couple years ago.
That is the thing that I think is most different about this is that public, the public support. And again, solidarity. There's like really nothing else you can call it. There is sort of this move to in labor to sort of say, I think especially, in 2023 after the pandemic, just sort of like upended so many industries and upended so many workers' lives as workers. It was just like everyone was affected, across the board in terms of pay and not having access to what they needed to have. And then in addition, just to sort of that overall health consciousness, right, of everybody, right? I think everyone's just more aware of it. And so there, even in a hospital strike where often you do see a lot of public pushback because hospitals are so crucial, and, Loretto stayed open during that entire 11-day strike, but it's always sort of a very tense thing. Even in those situations, you're seeing a lot more public support.
This one is for all the project managers, software developers, and anybody else who might be looking for better ways to build teams and manage work. On September 14th in nearby Madison, Wisconsin, catch Scrum Day. It's a one-day conference all about the Scrum approach and other agile methods of project management. There'll be networking, breakout sessions, and presentations like the empowerment equation for product owners and the art of stopping the start. If any of these titles apply to you, that's executive, product owner, scrum master, or developer, I bet you don't want to miss Scrum Day in Madison next month. Get your tickets now at scrumday.org. Going into the summer, so much attention was focused on the major festivals that would call Chicago home. And while we still have a few left, some of those big ones, particularly the ones that cause major headaches for Chicagoans, have come and gone. There will still be months and plenty of studies to talk about what were the impacts economically, the impact on our parks from things like NASCAR, Lollapalooza. But Simone, I think my first question to you, right? Having seen some of these big events and all of the storms that they bring, were they worth it?
I wish I knew, because I didn't go to any of them. So we'll just get that out of the way right off the bat.
Mm,
Trying to get numbers for, cost versus what it brought to the city versus, again, the sort of happiness of the people who do participate, which I think is not worth, that's not nothing. That's certainly part of all this. I will say, with the exception of NASCAR, my life wasn't as affected by these various festivals
hmm
as I maybe was anticipating at the beginning of the summer. Like, I definitely thought Lollapalooza was going to cause me more headaches than it actually did, and it was totally fine. I just avoided downtown. As close as Fulton Market. That's as close as I got to downtown during Lollapalooza weekend, and it was totally fine. It was not a big deal.
hmm
The NASCAR road closures along Lakeshore Drive, those really messed me up. I had some bad delays
They
from
push you back
those.
for sure.
Oh, that was rough. But overall, like, once the weekend was in swing, especially because it rained so much that weekend,
hmm
they weren't as inconvenient as I had like built them up in my head to be.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll give them that for this summer.
hmm I feel like the same thing happens to me every summer, whereas in the time leading up to these events, and even while they're going on, I find it very easy to lean into the scrutiny, right? I wasn't going to attend NASCAR, didn't plan to attend Lala. I did go to some of the smaller festivals. I stopped by Pitchfork for a day, stopped by Lyrical Lemonade for a day, stopped by Fiesta del Sol. It's a smaller street festival, but still brings in, hundreds of thousands of people. And at this point in every summer, one of the things that makes me consider that for sure some of these are worth it is, as you said, I think it's hard to measure the joy people feel attending these events in the lead up, because it's so easy to ask the questions, as we should. Well, how are we using our city's resources? How are we protecting parks? How is construction going to impact people? Are festivals working with neighborhoods? And then I go to some of these festivals, even the ones that are, sort of centered in a neighborhood park or on taking up neighborhood streets, and you see the joy of people who, sure, many of them have like taken public transit into the neighborhood. But I also got the opportunity to talk to people attending some of these festivals who live along the route, who live next to the car parades and live next to the music festivals. And there still is this sense of connection, this ability to see some of the people in their community, to see their parks being lit up in these beautiful ways. And so I'm always left at this point of the summer trying to measure, how do we take into account the happiness we feel attending some of these against what it means to put on these major events in the city, and the pictures and the backdrops, the ability to stop into a bunch of neighborhoods that I otherwise might not have, ventured into on that weekend. It's this personal joy that has to be balanced against this sort of collective responsibility. And like you said, I don't know if I can say, was it worth it, but I do know I'm not over it yet.
Well, yeah, to your point, I think a big one that I will be watching out for is Riot Fest, which isn't until September 15th through the 17th.
hmm
And just because that one, I think, besides Lollapalooza, is probably the biggest festival where you have this really, really loud contingent of neighbors who have said, we do not
Yeah.
want this in Douglas Park. I think of all of the major fests on Chicago's schedule is one of the more contentious ones. And so will be interesting to see, again, as other fests moved out of Douglas Park this summer, how this final one will kind of shake out and what the response will be and what the cleanup will be like and what it means for
hmm
folks around Douglas Park, of will they be able to use that park and kind of what's going on.
Yeah. I know there's some CityCast listeners going, Kobe, don't fall for the pretty pictures. But honestly, as somebody who has a really nice camera and never gets to use it, the excuse that these have given me to get some really beautiful pictures this summer, I got to share with you. I got some amazing, Amazing festival pictures this summer. Everything again from things in my neighborhood to things on the other side of the city. Um, Man, I don't think we can move into good news without talking about the weather that has taken place this summer. We literally came into summer in the throes of a drought, and since then have experienced everything from wildfire smoke to record rainfall and flooding. And I will say, I don't think it's gotten that hot thus far, sort of being balanced out against these other phenomena. Simone, what are you making of summer weather to this point?
Yeah, it hasn't been that hot. We had a few days in July where it got really hot and humid
Mm-hmm.
that we kind of had to watch out for. But I think the biggest, and we talked about this a little bit on Friday's show. I think those floods and that rain just felt. Even as we have this record this conversation, it was gray again today. No torrential downpours, but it's just been a kind of a
Mm-hmm.
gray summer. And I think, what ways you mentioned, the period with the fact that stood out to me in the Sun Times, I was reading that the period between April 1st and June 30th was one of the driest on record. And
Mm-hmm.
Illinois has suffered from drought conditions, and all this rain that the at least the Chicagoland area has gotten still doesn't make up for that.
Yeah.
We're still in drought, and it was like would need to get like consistent rain, sort of through September, to kind of actually make up the difference. So
It
even all
feels like
this.
we're damned if you do, damned if you don't. We've lived through drought. We've seen rainfall. I've seen my basement flooded before. The wildfire smoke was one where, again, I know experts are saying, hey, we deal with poor air quality across neighborhoods in our city every single day, and we should be vigilant about working to improve that. But this particular type of air pollution, where the entire city feels blanketed by haze, is not something I actually have any deep memory for.
I would honestly, if I had to rank like one of the more depressing stories of the summer, just the
Yeah.
weather has been rough. Like it's everyone was so excited to enjoy summertime shy, I feel like, and it was the weather was not cooperating at
No,
all.
whether you like some of the events we talked about earlier or not, but like NASCAR got rained on, Fiesta del Sol got rained on, Beyonce got rained on. Like those weekends, were rough out there throughout the summer. It was not a lot of consistent week-long weeks where you could say we could just be outside cooling throughout the day. All right, so we have talked sort of ongoing housing crisis. We have talked momentum of strikes and labor actions in the city. We sprinkled a little bit of like what have these major events meant, as well as discuss the weather. For you, Simone, summer ends in 3 weeks. Overall, what grade are you giving Summertime Shy thus far?
Ooh, that is a great question. You know, despite everything and despite, you know, some of these stories that we have to cover that are so tough, I have had a really good summer and I've really enjoyed Chicago this summer. I have felt more like a Chicagoan this summer than I have so far in my 2.5 years back in the city. Uh, so I gotta give it. We'll give it a. We'll go with an A minus. We'll give it the A
You're gonna go with an
minus.
A
Yeah,
minus. Okay.
I really enjoyed it. I personally had a great summer. I got to see some stars. I've been to so many brunches. I've been out at the lake. I got to see Barbie, and I dressed up. I successfully escaped an escape room for the first time. It was 90s themed. It was great. Um, yeah, I have been out and about and doing stuff and like making new friends, and it's been
Mhm.
excellent. Jacoby, what about you? What grade are you giving Summertime Shy?
I mean, using the barometer you just gave, I mean, just sort of taking all of these stories in, what they mean for the city, but then sort of how was my personal experience? I'm gonna have to give it a B plus.
Okay. Okay.
I worked really hard this summer, I feel like, and didn't maybe take as much rest as I needed. But I still got out. I got to kayak the Chicago River. I got to see my brother perform in the final Silver Room block party. I even spent a few weeks watching the Ashleen Bracey League, which is a pro-am all women's, all non-men basketball league in the city and got to watch those fun games for a few weeks. And so overall, I'm going to give it a B plus. The weather was a huge sour point. I thought I'd be outside a little bit more without this constant feeling of the irreparable damage I'm doing to my lungs, or just because I got caught in a few of those rains where I was like, I'm out on Lakeshore.
I lost some
chilling.
books. Some good books were lost.
Yeah, I didn't check the weather, and next thing I know, it was pouring down, and I was either walking or biking my way back home. So I'm gonna have to give it a B plus. I wanted to see my people win a little bit more this summer, but we still got some more 2023 to hit some of our goals.
You still have 6 weeks to make that grade, though. Right. I'm on the quarter system. You're on the semester system. I think that's what's going on here.
And that's a great segue into some good news.
Well, one thing I know for sure I have on the agenda to finish out the summer is I'm going to go see the Fairy Homes exhibit art installation at the Garfield Park Conservatory.
Okay.
This is, if you're into fairies, if you're into cute stuff, and in addition to flowers, this is running through September 17th. It is, so normally the conservatory is free. To get into the fairy garden exhibit, it is $5 for adults who live outside of Garfield Park, but I am perfectly happy to pay $5 to see some very cute fairy houses that have been crafted by artists. It is just a delight, and it's free for kids too. So if you've got little ones that you want to, I don't know, have you ever seen a fairy garden, Jacoby? They're so cute. They're so lovely.
I have not, so I need to pop back over there. I haven't been over there since the spring flower shows, and so I might need to make sure I get my summer visit in. I mean, as I look through our calendar of events, there are so many more festivals still coming up.
There's so many.
Especially on my side of the side of town. We got the 79th Street Renaissance Fair in September. We got the African Festival of the Arts in Washington Park in September. But I am going to focus my good news and what I'm excited for in the next couple of weeks is football. Soldier Field has seen some great acts, whether it's actual football, whether it's Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran. But most people think of Soldier Field and they think of football. And on September 2nd will be the 25th anniversary of the Chicago Football Classic, which will see two historically black colleges, Central State University, face off against Mississippi Valley State University. There'll be a week of events around that, including a high school battle of the bands that'll take place right before. And then that'll warm Soldier Field up because then just a little bit over a week later, September 10th, the Bears open their season at home against the rival Green Bay Packers. And while I am not yet ready to predict what the Bears' final season record will be, I do think if we get a win against the Packers out the way week one, we could pretty much deal with any heartbreak, any momentum, anything that is to come of that, good or bad. I think we get that one off the books, especially the first one in the post-Aaron Rodgers era. I think that'll just make Chicago Bears fans feel all kind of warms in their Bear logo tummy.
Jacoby, I got to ask, though, football, is that a summer sport?
Is football a summer sport? Well, technically, college football comes back and the NFL come back in some capacity before Labor Day. So whether it's my schedule or your schedule, football is a summer sport. It is. So yeah, it's a post summer sport, like a back end of summer sport. That was a good question. You really put me on the ropes there because the answer is no. The answer is no. But I'm like, damn, we've already what is summer? What is summer in these ever-shifting seasons? Regardless, there is so much here for people to make their way through. If you want to learn more about the stories we talked about today, please head over to our show notes. We'll give you a bunch of helpful links. And to follow other Chicago news and events, there's only one newsletter for you to subscribe to, and that's Hey Chicago at chicago.citycast.fm. I want to thank our lead producer once again, Simone Alicea, for making time.
Hey, thanks.
Before we let you go, Mayor Brandon Johnson made some leadership changes in his administration over the weekend, and they were some big ones, including firing Chicago Department of Public Health Chief Allison Arwoody. Johnson also named Larry Snelling the new police superintendent. Snelling recently led the department's counterterrorism division. These are some of the most critical moves Johnson has made thus far, and we're going to be breaking them down tomorrow. In the meantime, in between time, rate and review the podcast wherever you listen. It helps other people find us. I'll talk to you soon. Peace. All right, see, that's how you do that. If you just did that at the beginning, you know, we could just be boom, 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 ba boom, 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 ba boom, boom, bow. Instead, it's like